Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Untempered. Today I'm sitting down with Richard Grannon for the second time. We are in Liverpool. Hi Richard, how are you?
I'm good.
Second time around.
Yes, it is.
And of many, hopefully.
Let's hope so.
I'm so happy you're back because I felt like last episode we didn't have enough time. I think I'm going to feel the same way today because you just know so much. My introduction to you was a few years ago, actually, when I was venting to a friend. And she said to me, I think your ex is a narcissist. And actually, before it became such an overused word, back then, honestly, I had never really heard the word before. So that's when I dove into the amazing resources that you have on your YouTube channel and your Instagram and your website and everything. And I actually realized that I was a survivor of narcissistic abuse. Mm-hmm. And my last video on my YouTube, I was being vulnerable and I was talking to an expert, and I was talking to her about how I don't know how I show up in relationships. And, you know, I think I'm too sensitive and I think this. But then I learned that there are ways that narcissistic abuse can actually change the way you think about yourself. Mm-hmm. And that blew my mind because I started to reassess who I was as I know me, the self, and then who I became throughout the years of abuse. And I didn't really know that I was in an abusive relationship because it was emotional abuse. And my parents were narcissists, so that it innately made me almost tolerant. Mm-hmm. Or blind. So today, my goal for this video is to make it a little bit of a Bible for people who are kind of in a similar situation to me. Okay. Because you can always find out, okay, what is narcissism? What is this? Whatever. But I want to kind of put people in my spot or people who are in my spot so that they can understand, so we can tick off the experience of being with a narcissist, how we can tell those signs. And then we can talk about recovery and so far and so forth.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yes?
Yes.
Amazing. So let's start with the signs, the undercurrent signs. How do we know? How come I didn't know?
How do we know and how come you didn't know?
Yeah, because I mean, it was years with my parents and I never really thought about it, looked into it, thought it would be a personality disorder. And then with a relationship, it just never came to mind. I would never known. And then later I realized how much it shaped me. So how come it's so good that you don't know?
How come the abuse is so effective that you don't even realize it's happening?
Yeah.
Well, the nature of the abuse, whether intentionally or not, is it damages your ability to make judgments and it damages your ability to tell fantasy from reality. Because when you're in a dyad, when you're in a duo with somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder, they pull you into their world. And it's like being dipped in a corrosive acid and it corrodes boundaries, it corrodes critical thinking. And it corrodes our capacity to be confident in our assessment of reality. So you lose a lot of confidence and you become insecure and you become confused. And in your confusion, you seek leadership. And then they offer you that leadership, but they're leading you to the slaughterhouse.
So they pretend to be like the rescuer, but they're actually the ones that are actually also the offender.
Well, let's go a little deeper. They are pretending to be the rescuer, yes, but when you are talking transactional analysis, and there's this thing called the Karpman drama triangle, where you are the persecutor, the victim, or the rescuer. Everybody who does that is playing a game. It's not sincere communication. It's not sincere adult-to-adult communication. So everybody who plays the role of savior or persecutor or victim is playing a game. So yes, they are pretending to be your savior, but to them subjectively, they are sincerely saving you. It's just that they're very mentally ill. So their version of salvation would be something like, do as you're told and obey me completely and you will be saved, which sounds like the language of a cult.
Yeah.
Do as you're told and you will be saved. So that none shall enter the kingdom of heaven but through me. So Neil, submit. Through me, all good things can happen. Without me, you go to hell. And probably for you and most people watching, that kind of splitting absolutism, heaven, hell, good, bad, resonates. It sounds familiar because that's how they talk. That's how they think. So in their worldview, that you could say that the narcissist is also the victim of their own narcissistic delusion. It's not like they're outside of it going,
They believe it.
Yeah, they really believe it. They really believe it. They're really in that cult. They are a missionary of that cult. They are a sacrifice and you are a sacrifice, but they're a high priest and you're just a person.
But they believe that. So that is their own reality.
That is their reality, yeah.
So who is behind that mask? What is behind that person?
We're going deep early on.
Yeah.
So there isn't really anybody behind the mask. There is just mask, which I know it sounds a little bit poetic and a bit flimsy, a bit mythical, but there isn't. So as a codependent, you have a mask. I have a mask. Mm-hmm. Who are you behind the mask? Not much. Who am I behind the mask? Not much. So in that way, we reflect the codependent narcissist. They reflect each other. There are two different masks. Your mask would be a sacrificial lamb, scapegoated victim. And that would be your source of control. And their source of control is persecutor and savior and predator. But they're both masks. So if you're asking where is the authentic self, there's not much room for an authentic self there. So the codependent narcissist dynamic is two not very strong selves interacting with each other in a dyad that fits hand in glove. The pathologies fit together. Not always. You know, there'll be people who watch this and be like, no, I was completely healthy when I started the relationship. And I would say maybe, or maybe you don't realize where you were sick. Because why would any of us stay in a relationship that we knew was abusive? This is a good question that we have to ask.
Or why didn't we know or notice that there was emotional abuse when it's not so obvious?
Yeah.
This is my thing, is obviously there's a lot of information about, okay, it's obvious if someone's a narcissist because of the love bombing stage and all this stuff. But I'm like, in my situation, there was no love bombing. It was just more,
Me too. And I get quite irritated when people insist on this model that comes from the internet. It's not in the clinical literature and it's drawn in crayon. It's dumb. It's elementary. Right. First, there's love bombing. And then you're going to be nasty to you. And then they discard you. And then there's a hoovering phase. I'm like, that is not true. It sometimes happens. It's adjacent to the truth. But for those of us who didn't experience love bombing, we'll be there scratching our heads going, well, I wasn't love bombed.
Yes.
So then was it a narcissistically abusive relationship or not? Or did you not experience it as love bombing? Did you not feel the idealization phase? Because we shouldn't really call it love bombing. Love bombing is taking cult psychology and applying it to narcissistic abuse. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Love bombing from cult psychology is a new member enters the cult and we all shower them with validation. We have been waiting for you. You're an essential part of the project. Through you, because of this piece that you bring, we're all going to enter the mothership on, 2025 when the mothership, whatever the story is of salvation. So that's love bombing. In a narcissistically abusive relationship, and I don't want to sound like I'm being a pedant for the proper language. It's idealization. And it's not something that I say I'm the narcissist and you're the codependent. I don't just do this to you. You do it to me too. We idealize each other. That is the truth of the beginning of the narcissistic abusive relationship. Not you're just sat there, innocent lamb, empty sock waiting to be filled with love bombing. No, the dance begins very, very early on. People don't like me saying that because I'm putting the agency back on them. Or they think I'm doing victim blaming. And it's not that. It's that we have to know what has really happened. And you can be induced into co-idealization without consenting to it. So you asked a really simple question, which is who is behind the mask? There are very few simple answers here. If we really want to get granular and accurate with the truth, this is a complicated subject. It's very, very complex.
Yeah. But I think what you're getting at is there are some, so me being the codependent, you're the narcissist, right? there are some core wounds and massively unmet needs
Yes.
that I have that have made me a magnet to you, or made me more, first of all, would that have attracted you to me, or would that have just kept me in the relationship? Do you think narcissists can tell? You know what I mean? I think if we don't start off with me having strong boundaries, then this wouldn't even be a thing. Maybe they wouldn't even call on the second date.
No, they wouldn't.
Exactly.
100%.
So,
Like for me, I'm a rigid, dogmatic absolutist on that. If you had strong boundaries, I wouldn't call you and you wouldn't call me. We would brush off each other.
Yeah.
And you must have had the experience. I think we discussed this in the last interview of meeting somebody. They're hot. They tick your boxes. They have the same interests as you do, but it's just not there.
Yeah.
What's not there? The special chemistry of sadomasochistic torture that I'm really secretly desiring. I need to be abandoned and tortured and thrown, and they're not going to do that. So it's a tough one because I don't know exactly where the boundaries are of how it works personally. I really don't. But we get attracted to each other as human beings for many, many reasons, and a lot of them are unconscious, and they're to do with our childhood scripts. You said childhood wounds. They're to do with the fulfillment of a script. I want you to betray me. If you're not going to betray me, I'm not going to get off. I'm not going to get, we'll do this because this will upset people.
that's why we do it.
I postulate that there's something called, we know what narcissistic supply is. Narcissistic supply is where the narcissist fosters and generates as much attention and power through attention for themselves as they can. And they fill up on that. I believe there's something called codependent supply, which is a form of abuse. There's a kind of abuse that codependents get off on. And so you end up with, roughly speaking, a sort of a sadomasochistic relationship. If the goal is, like, for me as a hardcore codependent, after the age of 30, which is when I cut my father out of my life, I went, I got rid of my dad. I must have really strong boundaries. I just reintroduced him back in through women. And if they weren't going to offer some level of abuse, I didn't interact with them.
Because of the familiarity. Something about the familiarity just feels right, and you're not really sure what it is.
So there was like 5 relationships from after the age of 30. One of them didn't have, 2 of them didn't have a personality disorder or any significant mental health issues aside from depression, but she was married. She didn't tell me. So did I know? Probably.
Really?
Probably. Because what do we really know from each other? There's what we know consciously, and then there's everything we can detect unconsciously from a person. Maybe I didn't know that she was married, but maybe I knew she was holding a big secret. And maybe I knew she was unavailable somehow. And then I let myself get involved in a thing that after 3 months, she was like, oh, I have to tell you something. I am having a husband. And I was like,
was that her accent?
She spoke to me in Spanish, so no. She called me on the phone. She was coming to my house, and she was driving to the house, and she was crying. And I was like, ¿Qué te pasa? ¿Qué ha pasado? And that's when she said to me, like, oh, I have to tell you something. And I was like, oh God, what is it?
And how long after you guys, like, when was this? In the 2 month, 3 month, 4 month mark?
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I really want to talk about this, because I think a lot of people who haven't experienced this are going to be like, oh, you're just saying that the codependent's also getting something out of it, but it's not like that. I think I've realized now what you're trying to say, and I've experienced this, is yes, you reintroduce the trauma that you're already used to in the form of people who are emotionally unavailable, abusers.
Yeah.
And in a way, there's a way you try to earn their love, and that's kind of like a way of you feeling like you're fixing your childhood, or you're fixing your parents.
Yes, you could say it like this. You're trying to win love from a person who cannot love you, or from a person who practically is not in a position to be in a relationship with you, because you're trying to solve the puzzle from childhood. You failed to win love from your mother. You failed to win love from your father. When I'm using language like this, I'm speaking within the context of psychology.
Right.
So a child can't fail. They didn't fail to win love from their parents.
Of course.
In the same way that you didn't want to be abused. I didn't want to be abused in layman's terms. But in psychology, we understand that you can have unconscious wants and unconscious drives. So that's to make that point clear. It's not victim blaming, but it's also what's the opposite of victim blaming? Victim absolutionism, where there's just, we pretend victims
No fault.
just, no fault. They're just jellyfish. Nothing happened. I couldn't have walked away. The women who destroyed my life, they didn't, okay, there's a few, they were occasionally violent with me, but they were tiny. Like, I wasn't in real threat. I had the money, I had the power. At any point I could have walked away, but I didn't. So some part of me was still, I have a therapist, he says it's a hunger, was hungering for the resolution or the replication of abuse. And that's why I stayed. And that's something that has to be introduced into the conversation about narcissistic codependent dynamics. Like, what are we trying to get done? Because we're all playing this stupid game where we pretend naively that it's just a simple case of, you want what you want and then you go get it. There isn't a human being alive who does that. There's no human on earth who's like, I want this and I'm going to walk in a straight line for that thing. Nobody does that. We're too complicated. There's too many parts to us. There's too many conflicting elements to us that do this weird dance that we have to figure out. But that's an element of the codependent narcissistic relationship that we, like, if people want to reject this and be like, no, I was a pure victim. Good luck to you. Good luck to you. You'll never recover. And you'll walk into another relationship like this again and again and again until you address the unfulfilled need in the abuse, in the trauma. I needed to be betrayed. Hands up. I know that I needed and I wanted and I got something out of the betrayal cycle because I did it again and again and again. I had a choice. I wasn't on a desert island. There was other women around. But you started this by saying, do we pick each other? I have to conclude that we do. Like, the narcissist knows your wounds, you know what they're capable of, and then you come together.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, even though this is going to piss people off and somebody out there is going to be like, what do you mean? You're saying it's my fault? No, we have to understand that part to be able to get to a resolution. Because again, the pattern that you said, which I have repeated, and it's very true, again, from experience, guys, you will repeat the pattern unless you get to the main reason. Well, why didn't I leave? Now, the question is, when you can't leave, like when it's my mother and I'm not able to leave as a child, you're just entrapped in this, right? There's no choice. When I was able to leave, like the story of you and your dad, I did always give her chances to come back. And I made excuses for her. She almost didn't have to gaslight me enough. I would just gaslight myself to allow her to enter again. Until it became complete no contact is when I actually felt the withdrawals. And I felt that I did need her love/abuse in a way.
A twisted attention.
Yeah. So it's really important to understand that part that you're saying so that we can actually get to it.
As a child, like, to sort of steel man your position, as a child, you can't escape. Your mother, your father effectively are gods. You have no credit card, you have no car, you can't go anywhere. You rely on them for everything. And then you said gaslighting. I would say brainwashing, entrainment. You're in a small cult. You're entrained. You listen to your mother. You listen to your father. Do as you're told. You don't know what you're doing. Yeah. You're a fucking idiot. You're this, you're that. All the humiliation, all of the guilt, all of the shame that's heaped on you. It breaks these boundaries down. The narcissistic, the abusive relationship breaks the self down. So then you said, who's behind the mask? Who's left? How much of you is left? You might not feel that you can get a stronger sense of self, but if you've been through all that, it takes a while to come back. You have to learn to be. Yeah. So behind the narcissist mask, there really is no ego, which is a weird thing to say because people think they're very egotistical. There's a huge super ego, but no ego. Behind the codependent mask, it's the same thing. There's a very fragile ego.
And that all comes from, how is a narcissist made? Like, is it you're born with it? Like, how does one become a narcissist? Is it like, I don't want to empathize with them, but
Well, you should.
I kind of want to understand. Yeah. It's like, how do you become that way? Because of all the personality disorders, am I wrong to say that it is one of the most hardest to heal from?
Well, there isn't universal consensus within psychiatry and psychotherapy on that point, but there's people who have a similar point of view to me, which would be we have to stop mixing narcissistic traits with narcissistic personality disorder.
Yes. Okay.
So if it's narcissistic personality disorder, that's like an anti-therapeutic personality disorder.
Wow.
Yeah. There's just...
They'll do anything to repel therapy.
They'll do anything. Well, therapy should lead you to truth through vulnerability. I ain't doing truth. What do I want truth for?
Vulnerability.
I'm damn sure not doing vulnerability. You do vulnerability. There's nothing wrong with me. Why am I even in therapy? Somebody must have forced me to be here, like the court, or I'm here to make a point. Everything is performative. If you do therapy performatively, it doesn't matter what your condition is. It's not going to do anything. Oh, I went to therapy.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. They're just going to therapy. It's what? To do what? I can't even tell a therapist the truth. If I have MPD and they say to me, let's get into the truth of how you feel, I am not capable of doing that. I don't know. And I'm not interested. It's like, they would be like saying, describe the laws of thermodynamics to me in ancient Greek. I don't know how to do that, and I'm not interested in doing that. I'll pretend if you're going to pat me on the back and tell somebody that I'm a good boy. And this is what we know with narcissists and psychopaths, therapy can make them worse. They just learn the language of therapy and then spew it back out against their victims, which is what you have in the online narcissism space right now.
Everyone's like, you're gaslighting me.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. And so to answer your question, no. For me, absolutely. I'm rigid and dogmatic on that as well. If it's narcissistic personality disorder and you think you've got a therapeutic modality to deal with it, good luck.
But is there a scale?
That's narcissistic traits.
Okay, so there's a scale for narcissistic traits, but there isn't a scale for narcissistic personality disorder.
Binary. This is my opinion.
Okay.
It's absolutely binary because it's like, it's almost like the evolutionary question of where a turtle grew a shell. So you either have the shell or you don't. If you have a soft shell, well, that's not narcissistic personality disorder. The shell is the total denial of reality. You said, how is it formed? So I have to be in a very strange childhood environment, which is why MPD is still fairly rare. I think it's still only 1% of the population who have MPD. So you need to have a child who's stuck in a situation where they're being told that two things are true at the same time that cannot be true at the same time. And both those things are false.
Okay.
I am wonderful and I am amazing and I am godlike, while simultaneously being told I'm useless and worthless and a piece of shit. This is not true and this is not true. I am a child. But I'm not receiving the love and safety and attention that I so deeply crave from my parents. What I'm receiving are these very, very strange mixed messages. I internalize them. So now I have a voice in my head that's telling me I'm amazing, I'm godlike, I'm entitled to wonderful things. And another voice that's saying you're a piece of shit, you're worthless and you're nothing. Inside of that split, I then start to split good and bad parts of myself. Then when I get with you, I split you. There's the perfect you, there's everything I want, there's everything I was ever looking for. And then there's this awful side of you, the real you, that's useless and worthless and I don't want it. That's splitting. I split myself, I split you, and then you as the victim, you split yourself. You go as crazy as I do, and you start splitting. And then you start splitting other people.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you mean by split? Like, so how would I, the victim, split?
So splitting is a defense against nuance. So when a situation is very, very ambiguous and it creates a lot of cognitive dissonance, I think it's one of Freud's infantile defenses. You start to say, this person or this situation is altogether good or altogether bad. There's no shades of gray. That's splitting. So an example of how you as a victim would start splitting is you would start splitting your version of me. So we're in a relationship that's narcissistically abusive. My parents split me. I've split myself. I've split you. Now you reflect that split and you split me. And all the victims of narcissistic abuse know that they've done this. And I'll explain how. When I do something bad to you that you don't like and feels bad, you start to fight. But you don't fight me. You fight yourself. So inside of your head, there's one side of you that's going, look, he's a bad guy. And the other side goes, no, he's a good guy. He has to be a good guy. But he did a bad thing. Well, he has to be a good guy, so the bad thing must be my fault. Do you recall doing that?
Yeah.
We've all done it.
Yeah.
We've all done it. To the point it gets so bad, the psychosis gets so bad, you literally start to forget when they've done bad things. You just forget it. So all the back, they'll be driving along in your car one day, or you'll be washing your hair, and you'll be like, oh my God, do you remember why did I forget that memory? Why was I not really angry about that? You start to do what they're doing, which is to forget bad experiences, traumatic experiences, and dissociate. So narcissism, I claim, is a disorder as much of psychosis and dissociation as it is of psychopathy and a personality disorder. You will develop that dissociative disorder as well. You will develop that psychotic disorder as well, depending on how long you live with me and how extensive the abuse is.
Wow. So if somebody is in a relationship with somebody who has NPD, this could actually damage their autonomy, their brain.
It could do. So looking at the damage. So I've started to look at the neuroscience a little bit more. There does seem to be pretty clear indications that there is a difference between the brain of a narcissist and the brain of a person who doesn't have narcissistic personality disorder. One of the things that will start to happen to you across time, because I don't know whether they're doing that because the brain is damaged, or there are parts of the brain that are not the right size. They're too small. They look underdeveloped. Is that atrophy through lack of use, or are they genetically born that way and that's why they lack empathy? I don't know. Empathy is a skill that needs to be practiced. You're supposed to learn it in childhood and practice it through life. They don't. Maybe it atrophies. For the target, that kind of PTSD, it shrinks the hippocampus. So the hippocampal volume of somebody who's got very intense CPTSD or PTSD, it shrinks. The hippocampus is responsible for the allocation of appropriate emotion to memories, which is why you physically can't remember things properly. You get spots in your memory, especially as it pertains to the relationship and to the abuse. You just get very confused.
And that is why people stay.
That's part why they stay, yeah, because they're like, well, he's told me that I'm weak and stupid and easily confused and need him. I know that that's not true because, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Wow, maybe I am a bit of a ditz. Maybe he's right. He's always telling me I forget things. I had ex-girlfriends saying this to me, you're always forgetting stuff. I'm like, yeah, because you're driving me fucking crazy. I'm going out of my mind here. And yeah, you do. You forget. You forget the abuse. You forget who you are. You forget what you like. You forget what you want. They're very good. If it's narcissistic psychopathy, they'll invert your values. And they'll take pleasure in that. So you think something is good, they'll turn it so that the thing that you thought was good was bad. So then you start to live in a land of inverted values. You lose respect for yourself. You're getting forgetful. Your emotions are very dysregulated. It's a brutal scenario to be stuck inside of. Brutal. And yeah, anatomically, people very often they get sick.
Yeah. So for anybody who was thinking, should I leave or should I stay? There's the answer.
Oh God, yeah. It's no joke. It's no joke. Like you will almost, if you stay in a situation like that is so mind-numbingly stressful, you're almost certainly going to die younger. Because weight gain, weight loss, insomnia, I like last year, I got very, very sick and they were telling me I had like 7 years left to live.
Yeah.
That wasn't nothing to do with narcissistic abuse. That wasn't nothing to do with it. There were knock-on effects of things that had happened to me that made me do things that I just wasn't taking care of myself properly. So yeah, you can die.
I felt it from my parents. I felt like I became conditioned long-term after a while, after the last abusive scenario. I felt like I became conditioned to have low self-worth. I literally I remember talking to you about interjects, and you introduced that word to me, and I liked it because I was like, well, that's exactly what that little voice is. There's a part there that is the interject of my mother that's basically telling me that, I'm worthless, I'm not going to get anywhere, whatever. But at the same time, whenever I would give her things, most of the time, obviously 99% of the time it's money, then she would do the opposite, which is, you're amazing, you're the best daughter I've ever had, I could ever have, blah, blah, everything. So there was she instilled confusion in me. So it became impossible to make decisions. I can't even decide I would literally freeze to decide on what coffee I want, like simple things like that. And is that CPTSD? Is that long-term? Is that from long-term abuse?
Yeah, it's symptomatic of CPTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're dissociating.
So when you can't abandon them, when you can't go no contact, How do you strengthen yourself? How could you possibly strengthen yourself in a situation like that against a narcissist? Sometimes people say, okay, well, I can't leave. I have 3 kids with this guy or with this woman, whatever. So is there any kind of tactics that we can use to protect ourselves and have some kind of armor or shield? Or what would you say?
The only thing that I would say that is even remotely realistic in a situation like that is you have to have regular therapy sessions so that you have a third person, another adult outside of the dyad that you're in communication with, who's assisting you to defend yourself from the communication that you have with the narcissist. So the person with NPD, any and all communication with them is an opportunity to abuse you and to confuse you. So then you have to go to a sane person and tell them what has happened and tell them what's been said. And then you can start to figure it out between the two of you outside of the shared fantasy space between you and the narcissist, this matrix, this false reality that they create, so that you can maintain an anchor in reality.
Yeah. Go to therapy. That's what we said in our last episode.
Go to therapy.
Go to therapy.
Go to therapy.
Wow, that just blew my mind. So, I mean, how can somebody like actually be able to tell whether somebody has NPD or narcissistic traits? Like, that's what confuses me, because I have heard where people can say like, oh, it's just, everybody has narcissistic traits. I've heard that. Okay. And then you make excuses for them because you're being manipulated and confused. So what is it that we can say to people that can break that cycle to make them understand whether they were actually in danger of being in a long-term, really abusive relationship with somebody with NPD?
I would say turn away from narcissism. If that's what the person is doing, forget about narcissism for a minute, because if the sword of Damocles that hangs over the relationship is you trying to make a full clinical diagnosis of whether this person has NPD or it's just narcissistic traits, you're fucked. You're completely fucked, because you'll sit there for months and years going, well, I can't, because none of us can say for certain. They've not been submitted to clinical testing. I'm not a clinician. You're not a clinician. And even if you were, you can't diagnose your partner. That's just not allowed.
Yeah.
It's not functional. So don't do it on that basis. Make it really, really simple. Is this person consistently transgressing my boundaries for no valid reason? Is this person consistently doing things that I can say are cruel? Is this person consistently lying? Am I seeing love and validation here or not? These are simple questions that anyone can answer. They're really simple. People who stay stuck in the I don't know cycle, that's just denial. That's just it's an infantile defense, the same as splitting. I don't know. You know.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow.
Yeah. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Don't, because otherwise, like you'll just stay stuck. We're just creating another level of stuckness.
But is there any way we can find out if, let's say, people out there single going on 1, 2, 3, 4 dates? Is there a way you can find out before you get in too deep? Obviously not a diagnosis, but a way that you can diagnose them right away.
Don't have sex with them.
Okay.
If it's dating, get to know somebody very slowly. Get to know them in multiple contexts. Anybody can wear a mask for 1 or 2 dates until they've got you into bed. Once you've had sex with them, especially if it's good or even halfway good, well, your boundaries are breaking. Again, the culture that we have now, hookup culture and speed dating and all of that, it's a nightmare for the propagation of narcissism. It's a nightmare.
It's just a bunch of trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, a girl, her name is Mary. She goes on a couple of dates. The guy's really hot. She sleeps with him. He's texting her all the time until he sleeps with her. Then after he slept with her, the time it takes for him to text back, instead of it being like 5 minutes, is now 45 minutes. And the day after that, it's 2 hours. And and she's like, was this me? Am I being clingy? We had sex and now he's not. Paul goes and does the same thing. And he doesn't realize that the girl that he slept with, who he, set his sights on, was dating him and 5 other guys at the same time. So then these 2 people are now walking around traumatized. What do? oh, they take a year out and go to therapy. Do they fuck? They just go back into the dating pool.
Repeat the cycle.
Yeah, and so you look at people now who are not married in their 20s, 30s, and now in their 40s like me, and you look in the dating pool, what do you see? You see sadness, trauma, and rage. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Total emotional dysregulation. Nobody knows what the rules are because there are no rules anymore.
But the biggest thing is don't give somebody the power of just sleeping with them.
Stop fucking. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, it's going to end up sounding like a Christian conservative.
I'm going to put a little priest thing on you,
Yeah.
like a CGI priest thing.
You need to stop having sex, okay, bucko?
That's the problem.
That's the problem. Pick up a burden. It's, okay, so what I would say with sex, having had loads of promiscuous sex and enjoyed all that, I'm going to tell you not. It's...
now that you've had your...
Now I've had my fun. The door closes behind me. None of you fuckers are going to keep doing it. Is to take it... I really wish I hadn't. And to be fair to myself, there were more situations where... This is a bit weird, actually. There are more situations in my life where I could have had sex and refused than could have had sex and said yes. Which is kind of weird. But I just I think it's because I took acid as a kid. And I just instinctively was like, part of me wants to, but another part of me feels like I'm going to lose something.
Yes.
I just feel I'm going to lose out here. And I'll be like, what is it? Why don't you just have sex? And then the other part would be like, don't. You're going to lose something. But I wish I'd known a couple of things. And we discussed this before. Romance is not a game. Sex is not a game. Playing mummies and daddies and husbands and wives in miniature version is not a game. And that's what you have people doing. I mean, in our culture, it's well, in the West, I don't know. In Lebanon, I don't know how liberal it is. But here at age 17, oh yeah, my daughter's got a boyfriend and he comes and stays the night and she goes there. And I'm just like, okay, again, not Jordan Peterson, not a Christian conservative, but just wait a minute. This is like some powerful magic that you're doing right now. And it's not a game. It warps reality. These are powerful instincts inside of us. There's no such thing as casual sex. God help anybody who believes that.
Yeah. God
help anybody who believes it. Like I just want the physical pleasure without any of the consequences. Okay, so try. You're all broken. Everybody who does this is just broken. They're sad. You see it in their eyes. They're not happy humans. We as humans we can't do that.
We believe that there's a connection, but there really isn't. And that's a thing.
There might be, or there might not be. The thing is, you're going to create a connection. You're going to create a connection, but that doesn't mean the connection is good. You can't, like, there's an ex-girlfriend of mine who's incredibly sexually promiscuous. And we stayed friends for a while and I would talk to her about it and we would laugh about it. She's basically like sexually incontinent. And I'd be like, aside from the sex, how do you feel about the fact that in this month you've fallen asleep in the arms of 5 different men? She's like, it's fine. I'm like, is it though? Is it okay for you? Is it good for them? You are sleeping next to another human body. You don't think that does anything to you? She's like, nah, you think too much.
It's warping your entire view on what it is. Is that her way of connecting? Because that's not a connection. It's a superficial way of feeling affection and then moving.
It's like eating a sandwich. It doesn't. But I would also say, and she's also said it's popped up. So she'd be like, that's fine in sex, but then in other areas of life, there's big problems, and she doesn't correlate the two. She's massively anxious, massively depressed, and I'm like, well, when you do this, you're not treating yourself as something that is valuable. You're treating that man as a resource, which she does. And she calls herself an alpha female. It's so funny. She has
alpha female.
Alpha female. She has debts coming out of her ass. She's a mess. She's a funny girl. You'd like her if you met her. She's really funny. She's one of the funniest girls I've ever been with. But she considers herself an alpha female. And I'm saying to her, but these guys are using you. And she said, no, I'm using them.
She feels like she is actually, we're dissecting this, but maybe she's getting power out of this.
She thinks it's an expression of agency.
Yeah, but it's not.
Well, I've said to her, we have to make rules and laws across the globe to stop men from having sex with corpses and goats. Like, you can't you can't base your value on the fact that a guy wants to
There's a
fuck you.
really
Like,
big wound there.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And so obviously we give away, in my opinion, I think we give away a huge amount of power when you have sex with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to talk about the fakeness of somebody who is going to be, let's not say narcissist, he's going to be an abusive person. And the biggest clues for me in the past, it's not been the whole everything that's going on in the internet, grandiose, everything literally I see online of saying that somebody is an abuser or narcissist. It's not what I see. It's like a coercion and a manipulation and a confusing, charming, almost quiet, very, very, actually everybody loves this person, you know, and everybody loved my mom when I went to school. Everyone's like, used to be like, what, why are you always so mad about your mom? She's lovely, you know? And these people, so they have that mask on, right? Is there something that narcissists can't fake?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I would just say that this idea of this trope of the classic grandiose narcissist, there are some people, clinicians saying that's actually a psychopath. So your true narcissist is always a mix of grandiose and vulnerable, and it's always compensatory. So this grandiose classic narcissist, you know,
walks through the room, fills up the room.
Yeah, it's like Bruce Wayne or Patrick Bateman, the guy with loads of girls who drives a red sports car, and that's a psychopath. That's not the not to me. The narcissistic personality disorder is very precarious, and it's very uncertain, and it's riddled with shame, and it's riddled with doubt. That's why they're hyper competitive. Why am I going to compete with you with, you know, if I'm just sat there going, I'm amazing, the world agrees I'm amazing, why am I so petty then? Why am I so hyper competitive? Why am I so easily provoked? Why if another guy walks into the room, am I like, you know, that it's kind of false. So that the idea of the classic grandiose narcissist that confused us all is probably a fiction. That's probably just a psychopath. You said there are some things that narcissists can't fake. Well, if we use fake as a verb, so imagine I'm the narcissist again. Everything in my reality is based on a fantasy. So everything is fake. So I'm not actively faking. I'm just sharing my false reality with you.
That makes it so much harder. Why, God, why? But is there any consequence that they're afraid of?
Oh, you said, is there anything that they can't fake?
They can't fake.
That they can't fake. No.
So you nothing.
I don't think so, because everything that enters in here, so around me, imagine there's a shell. It's like a force field, and any reality that comes in has to penetrate the shell, and through the shell it's translated. It's distorted, deleted, and generalized. So everything that is in here is kind of falsehood. So what would I not be able to fake?
Well, because they are faking something. Because if somebody shows their true colors within 6 months or a year, and sometimes it's even longer, they were putting on a front.
Yeah.
Right? So it was their reality because they believe that they are amazing or whatever, but they were putting on a front because then the true colors come out. Is that not faking? Is that just devaluation?
Well, so your question, you've asked a couple of good questions today, and it's kind of this implication of agency, and the question implies that I have agency. And I would say, if we're going to accept narcissistic personality disorder as a personality disorder, we simultaneously have to accept the person is very mentally ill. And so I don't really have a choice. Yes, I put up a front. Yes, I'm two-faced. I'm one person with you when we're out and people can see us. And then at home, I'm awful when no one can see us. So to you as a non-narcissistic person, as a neurotypical or whatever the BC term is, you would say, well, he's faking. Yes, in your world, I'm faking. On your planet, I'm putting up a front and I'm faking. On my planet, it's just me.
And is there a consequence that scares you, the narcissist? What scares
you? Exposure. And so I have the fear and the anxiety that I believe runs through every true narcissist is these superego injunctions I mentioned before. I have the superego injunction that's telling me I'm amazing and I'm wonderful. So there's two poles, and I'm desperately clinging to this pole, and I'm recruiting you, I'm recruiting him, I'm recruiting everybody to reassure me this is true. I'm amazing, aren't I? I am. But this pole just goes nowhere. It's always whispering on my shoulder, no, you're fake. People know that you're fake. They know that you're full of shit. They know that you're a liar. They know you're a hypocrite. They know you're a thief. So the exposure, if you bring me to exposure in the real world, this superego injunction will eat me alive. And I need this to eat you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It sounds kind of weird and creepy and mythical, but it's like I'm the acolyte of a dark god.
Yeah.
And it requires sacrifice. Your sacrifice, his sacrifice, her sacrifice. I could set up a cult and just keep throwing cult members to be sacrificed. But if you expose me, this thing is turning on me. And this will feel like death to me. It will, and I really will collapse because this thing will eat me alive, and I won't have any of this left. Because if you expose me, where am I going to get my narcissistic supply from? The entire world turns on me and goes, no, you really are a piece of shit. Where's my audience? Where are my followers? Fuck. If I had one person left, I might be able to use them as a lifeboat, and we just have like a little cult between the two of us. They all hate me, don't they, babe? Yeah, they're so jealous of you. Yeah, but you believe in me, don't you? Maybe I can survive if I shrink myself. But otherwise, like total exposure would lead to a collapse, yeah. So I fear exposure. Wow.
That reminds me of my mom because she found one of my videos and she hadn't spoken to me in years. Even after I had my baby, everything, no message, no contact, because I had cut her off financially. And the only time she called me was when she found my TED Talk, when I talked about, I don't know what she found, but I'm assuming it was that, when I talked about her abuse and her abandoning me. And that was really, really, I'd never heard her voice like that. And then again, as the victim, what did that make me feel rather than, well, hopefully now I'll be a little bit stronger knowing all this information. But I just felt immense amount of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it'll get to a point where as many times as I talk to Richard Grannon and have, all this information and read books, I think there will always be the victim's going to feel shame and guilt.
Oh, I don't know. I don't.
Hopefully not.
I don't. I mean.
Well, that takes me to the next question. So recovery.
But this is new. Like I'm flexing now. I'm like, I don't. But yeah, I had to do therapy for years, and I've sat in multiple car parks doing therapy on my phone and just crying in car parks across the world in Liverpool. I can name the number of car parks I've cried. Yeah. So there's a lot to go through, but now that being easily triggered into guilt and shame, it's pretty tough. So there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Is there?
You must go to therapy then.
I'm going to therapy.
And you must cry.
And I am crying all the time.
You have to tell the truth.
But so what is a way that, like, how do I know if I'm actually benefiting from therapy then? Because I've been going to therapy for 3 years. And when my mom called me, it was like instant shame and guilt. How long is it going to take?
Based on your body language, I don't think that your therapist is the right one for you right now. Based on your tone of voice.
It's so mean.
As a psychologist, I'm detecting that this therapist is a bit of a blunt tool for you. Is it a woman?
It's a woman, yeah.
How old is she?
She's probably around 40.
It's too young.
Really?
Yeah, get with a man.
Really?
Yeah, a guy, some salty old sailor.
Well, I had a life coach who wasn't a therapist. He was a life coach, which was great. But I really didn't understand still on the bad days how I could get rid of the long-term shame and guilt that my mom's instilled in me.
Yeah, it's tough. Like all joking aside, helping people through narcissistic abuse is tough. It's tough. You need world-class therapy. And really, it's only me. That's it.
You're the best. By the way, actually, genuinely, I got to say, I don't even have to say this. You haven't asked me to say this, but your courses are incredible.
Amazing.
Honestly,
they might be a genius.
No, you really are. But it's just, you can tell that you have your own experience in it too, because you're so passionate. And like when you're saying it, I don't even know if you have a script because it just comes like. And
no,
I was
he
just
knows
like,
I don't.
Really?
He's watched me.
The emotional literacy course, and then the knowing yourself, and just all these. I'm like, oh my god! Actually, I was doing it for you said do it for 30 days in a row. And
Yeah.
I stopped in the 18th day or something like that. And I'm very mad at myself for that.
Super ego
I can
injunctions.
go back.
That's like they're saying, she's getting well. I don't like this. Make her stop, make her forget.
Yeah, I started to kind of be, and then I got a little bit stunted with the emotional literacy because some days I didn't really know how I felt. So then I kind of stopped and I was like, oh, I just stopped. But then the next day I probably was having a better day and knew what was going on. So it's all about perseverance. But I really, really want people to do your courses. Honestly, it's so helpful.
Thank you.
If you can't go to therapy,
there are
go
courses.
to richardgranite.com.
There are courses. Yeah, there are, and with the courses, like people, I always say this: people are welcome to get a therapist to help them with the courses. And if you have a therapist and they contact us, we just add them to the course. So they can see what you're doing. And if the therapist wants to change stuff, sometimes the therapist will message me and be like, why are we doing this? Or can I change it like this? I'll be like, yeah, fine. Just work with the client. But yeah, it takes time. I mean, what we're talking about is resolving childhood trauma as well as resolving the narcissistic abuse in childhood. It's a big job.
Yeah. I could tell by your body language that your therapist is not doing a good job.
Have you been with the same woman for 3 years?
No. No, I was with an older woman at first and she did a lot of talking therapy and I felt like she was opening up the Pandora's box and then just going, see ya, time's over. And then I was like going in my car being like, oh my God, I just talked about all these things. I don't know what to do with them. I had like no tools. She was just going, here you go, let's walk through your past and then going, see ya. But I stuck with her because the interject of my mom was saying, you know, do you just keep changing teachers and changing subjects and changing therapists? And I was like, okay, I got to stay with this lady. But so I stayed with her and then I had a life coach. And he was lovely and he was great. But again, it's like these core things. And then now, so 3 therapists total. The new one is the one that was I wanted to do CBT with. And she's kind of helping me understand about the book, No Bad Parts. She's going to help you understand how to be more connected with certain parts of me and understand those parts. So it's interesting and good.
It's not working though.
But I don't think it's working because it is also making me get in touch. It's almost making me aware of lots of problems. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Now I know all the problems. But how do therapists don't really give you the answers right away. I feel like I would like to have like tactics or tools. Like, right, when you're feeling this part come up, what do I do? If you tell me now to breathe, what is that does that mean that I'm supposed to be breathing in the middle of the day when that happens? Like what do I do when that hits? Now we've made this about me. I'm sorry. But
it's okay. No, it's fine. Like a lot of people will I'm sure will sympathize with the way you feel. I just had some Americans do up my website and the marketing, and the first few drafts that they sent through was like pastel pinks and blues and Richard's going to help you achieve emotional freedom and stuff, and like writing stuff in my voice. And I was like, guys, none of my clients want this. Like, but your stuff is too masculine. I'm like, that's exactly what they want. They want solutions. They want skills. They want strengths. They know what they're getting. They've already filtered through YouTube. Most people who know me, they've watched like 15, 16 hours of YouTube before they hit the website. Yeah. If they wanted fluff and candle lighting, there's loads of people they can go to. So I rewrote the stuff for them and they're like, this reads like the outline for a self-defense course. And I'm like, yep.
Well, that's what it is.
That's
it should be that. Yeah.
It's a self-defense course.
There's something that really upsets me sometimes when in my therapy sessions is when I come to a conclusion, and the therapist goes, that makes sense to you, right? And I go, yes, it does make sense to me. And yes, it makes sense to me why I could feel extremely anxious, shame, guilt, whatever. But yes, it makes sense to me. I think that means acceptance. Like she wants me to accept that part of me. But yeah, I can accept it. I know it's there. I feel compassion for that part. But it also doesn't give me the toolkit to go out into the big world and be like...
It's a bit of a frameless question as well. If I say to you, and that makes sense to you, right? Yeah. I could say that to a lunatic in an asylum who was claiming to be Napoleon Bonaparte. That makes sense to you, right? Yep, I'm Napoleon. Good.
That's the thing.
You're still crazy. I'm not giving you... So in psychotherapy, there's an interview I shot in here with a Canadian guy who's in Gilmore Girls called David Sutcliffe.
Oh, yeah.
He's now a psychotherapist. And we were talking about the ideology that infects psychotherapy. And there is ideological coordinates, unfortunately, that have infected psychotherapy. And in trying to give you space as the client, if I represent all of psychotherapy across the decades now, it's almost as though I've made a virtue of just leaving you free to float in space. And you really don't need that.
No.
But I'm not supposed to offer you a moral philosophy.
Why?
Because the roots of psychotherapy and psychiatry, it's pretty hard to get away from Freud, who was a neurologist first. He was a failed archaeologist who became a neurologist. So everything is medical, and there's no morality in disease. So we're just everything. People say they hate Freud, but they still use Freudian coordinates. So there is no morality in disease. But I don't think we should be seeing this as it's not a virus. It's not like a kidney infection or something. It's part of you. But you need a moral philosophy.
Mm.
If you're going to recover from narcissistic abuse, you need a spiritual philosophy. You have to rewrite your own spiritual philosophy, which you get to do as an adult, which is really cool.
Like, tell me.
Well,
what does that look like?
That means you get to decide what your relationship with reality is and how a person should live. These are the questions once you get through, I'm going to regulate my emotions. I'm going to learn to process the inner critic. Then you have to move. So that's like white belt, yellow belt, regulate your emotions, deal with the inner critic. That's yellow belt. Then we go blue belt. Now you need a moral philosophy. Why? Because you came in and you said, I don't know whether I'm in a narcissistically abusive relationship. To use other language, what you're telling me is you don't know what is good and what is bad. Neither did I. Mm-hmm. So I tell my girlfriend, please don't do this thing that you keep doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. She keeps doing it. Is it good or is it bad? Does she have the right to do that? As a good boyfriend, should I just let her do whatever she wants? I didn't have a capacity to answer that question. Mm-hmm. I do now. Mm. There's not a problem for me now. But your sense of good and bad is probably a little bit weak. Mm-hmm. That's what makes you easy to manipulate. Mm-hmm. Then we have to teach you, so you develop it. You say, well, what is bad? And then you have to go through this process. You can't come up with a definitive answer. No philosopher in history has, but at least you can wrestle with it. Mm-hmm. I think bad is when somebody exploits me or enslaves me or steals from me. I think good is when somebody emancipates me or frees me or allows me the space to be more of who I truly am. Then from that, we can move, because from there you can say, this is bad and I'm not doing it. So you apply judgment, and you apply judgment to things. You go, that's good. It might not feel good, but it's good for me, so I'm going to do it. That's bad. It might feel good, but I know ultimately it's bad, so I'm not going to do it. Mm. Then you can protect yourself. Before that, you can't protect yourself. Mm. Nobody who has no moral philosophy will be able to protect themselves. The next hot guy, the next hot girl that comes along, they'll just be like, oh well, here we go again. From there, you then have to be able to, you have to rewrite your spiritual system. I don't know what your spiritual beliefs are, but you need to be able to distinguish between yourself and others, yourself and reality, and the purpose in life. Mm. Like, why are we here? What's the point of living? What does a good life look like? These are the questions that have to be answered, and those are philosophical, moving over into spiritual questions.
Because then I'll be able to define boundaries better too, because I think that when your boundaries have been broken down for so many years, including in your childhood, you're almost like conditioned to feel, like we talked about this last episode, mm-hmm. which is like you're conditioned to feel like it's wrong to put up boundaries because you're just a bitch.
Yes.
And if you do that, then you're just mean.
Yes.
I've been like called out for being mean, mm-hmm. when I said, I don't like that, mm-hmm. this doesn't make me happy. And so then the next time, and the next time, and the next time, I doubt my intuition on saying clearly what I want, because mm-hmm. I think I am bad, like you said, on that mental chalkboard. And so now, after years, I'm conditioned to not say what makes me unhappy and to just chug along.
Deal with it.
To deal with it, including with therapy. Like, actually, with like finding the right therapist is very hard. And my first therapist, I wasn't feeling good with her. Mm-hmm. And I wanted so badly to say, this is not working for me. Or can we please find a different tactic or different strategy or structure? Mm. But I didn't. I stayed for so long.
Yeah.
And it was just like pouring my heart out. And then it was like tick, tick, time's over.
So discernment and
I don't want
judgment.
to put people off therapy. That's not what it's supposed to be.
No, they're terrible therapists.
Yeah.
Nobody would deny that. A good therapist will tell you there are tons of terrible therapists. They're just people. They're really just people, but it's finding one that you can have a relationship that works for you.
How do I know if I'm actually having the right therapy?
For you individually,
Mm.
your sense of self would be stronger and your confidence would start to grow, because your sense of self is still a little bit shaky and your confidence isn't great, is it?
Mm.
Your confidence in your decision making specifically.
Yeah.
I know this because I'm psychic. Am I right? Yes.
It's like my life coach was like, just what do you want? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, oh God.
Am I allowed to want anything? When I say I, who am I referring to? Am I allowed to have an I? This is novel. Can I be a person? My God. If they don't understand that because they've not lived it, then they'll think you're talking crazy talk.
Is that one of the ways you could find out, like you can understand that you can have compassion for yourself, that you've survived abuse? Is one of the things is like a sense of self, low self-worth.
Yeah.
Doubting intuition.
I think the biggest thing is the lack of a sense of self. Low self-worth is downstream of it, because what are you supposed to be having worth for? There's nothing there. So when you have weak boundaries, I confused you there. You don't have weak boundaries around your daughter, do you?
No.
No, because your daughter has value. So I don't need to train you on how to have boundaries around your daughter, your access to your daughter, who can access your daughter. Your boundaries switch on like that. You know you have a daughter and you know that she has value, but you don't feel that way about your boundaries around you. Like, well, do I matter? Am I value? Am I even here? Right? I know this because I think like this and I have thought like this for years. You can't really, we all talk boundaries, but it's kind of bullshit. If you don't value the thing that you're setting a fence around, why would you set a fence around it? And if it doesn't exist, what are you setting a fence around? This is like delusional. The precious empty space, I'm protecting it. It's having a sense of self that's important. And then seeing that self and going, yeah, that's okay.
Which is in your course.
It is in my course.
Yeah.
It is in my course.
Having a sense of self.
But my therapist is very good. He regularly says to me, you're a good man. And I'll be like, oh, I exist. I'm a man. I'm a man that is good. Okay. I'm a person. Because I forget.
How long did it take you to actually feel like you can be assertive, high self-worth, you now, compared to who you were before?
Me? 46 years and 3 months.
Oh,
my birthday in March. Yeah. So it's all very recent. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. I wrote down, what are the long-term effects of pathological narcissistic abuse? And I've just portrayed them.
Not knowing
I
who
can't
you are.
order coffee, Richard. I don't know which coffee to get. They ask me if I want milk and I have no idea. I literally have no idea. I've literally stared at a lady. Now we're just completely going off. I've stared at a lady going, do you want milk in your coffee? And I literally am like,
Does your mum shout at you a lot when you were a kid?
yes.
Would you ever get depressed?
Would I ever?
Have you ever?
Yes. Yeah, I'm depressed right now.
Nice.
No, I'm kidding. Yes.
Worst example. This is the most depressing interview I've ever done.
It's so depressing. No, I'm kidding. Yes, I have struggled with it.
When you get depressed, do you feel heavy in your limbs?
You asked me this before, and my answer was, I feel heavy everywhere. Heavy in my limbs. Yeah.
Yeah, we did. I asked you.
You said, where does it hurt?
Where does it hurt? That's what I asked you.
Everywhere.
So under pressure, your tendency is dissociate, which usually indicates that one or both parents were screaming at you and it was completely overwhelming and your central nervous system was just going to shut down.
Yeah. So I mean, it was like a war house.
So there's a pronounced freezing response. So then that's one of the things that we have to work with in the CPTSD model, is to bring you out of the freeze response.
But why now? I've left my narcissistic relationships. I've cut off my mom. This is a therapy session. And I'm doing the most research and the most work, breath work, meditation, everything I possibly can do. But why is it now worse than ever before?
Because you're moving away from the directives of the superego injunction. And the superego injunction is looking down at you and saying, where are you going, you fucker? That's not where you go. You don't leave me. Mother doesn't want you to leave her. Mummy's a borderline. So as well as narcissism. And she's terrified of you abandoning her. Your success, your freedom, you becoming a whole person is awful for her. It's a nightmare. She never wanted you to be a whole and separate person. She wanted you to be a foot or a hand or an extension of her. She wanted to stay fused and blended with you. You becoming a person, she's convinced you would kill her, I think. So I think unconsciously you think when you fully become your own person, independent of her, like by some magical spell, she's going to die.
Yeah.
But she's not. She's going to whinge, but she's always whinging. What's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go cry in a Liverpool parking lot.
I know the best ones. You can at least look out at the sea, watch the seagulls mate
Really?
while you're doing it.
Is that what it was with seagulls? I thought they were crows.
The big
I
white
was like,
things
this
with
looks
the
like
yellow
a bad
beak.
music video. I literally was like, is this what it is? What's going on? They were just like, whoo. It was seagulls. That makes sense.
Seagulls, yeah. No, there's parts of Liverpool that are quite gothic. That's why they shot the last Batman movie here. You know that?
Really?
Yeah. There is a gothic. There are a lot of gothic
It is.
looks
It did
here.
give that. It did give me that vibe.
When it's sunny, it transforms in the sun.
All of England is like that.
All of
Honestly,
England's
I
like that.
landed on a sunny day 2 days ago, and I
Beautiful,
was
right?
literally thinking, why did I ever leave?
Yeah.
And then I was reminded 4
Honestly.
hours later.
Yeah. Why? Because it's hideous.
It's so grim.
It's
I
just,
know.
you're being splashed with cold water from the sky all the time.
Literally. Thank you so much, Richard, for, again, my therapy session.
You're very welcome.
It always ends up being a therapy session. I feel so selfish.
No, it's fine. You're very, very welcome. Yeah, what I would say, like to the people who are following you, is like this kind of thing can be resolved. It takes a little bit of pulling apart. It's like bomb disposal, and we just have to do it very, very carefully. So we just mentioned the superego injunction there. You're feeling worse because you're getting better, and the superego injunction doesn't like that. So then we have to be smart and work around the superego injunctions. So we have to be very, very careful. Don't worry too much about learning stuff and studying stuff and breath work and meditation. Worry about what's going on in here. You can't podcast bro your way out of this. There's no amount of cold baths is going to save you.
No amount of cold baths.
No amount of kettlebell swings or ice baths is going to save you. No, it's internal work. It's you. Yeah. It's you with you, and not you with your mother in the real world. You with the mother that's inside of you, which is a memory and a flashback to childhood. It's not real. She is powerful now inside of you, but with therapeutic intervention, with a therapist who understands what they're doing, where you look at that and you interact with this internal mother and learn that she's really not that powerful at all, then you will feel better, and then you'll have confidence and be able to make better decisions.
Thank you so much, Richard.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. Then I'll be able to tell the lady whether I want milk in my coffee.
That's the ultimate goal.
The ultimate goal.
All your therapy.
It's just to answer that question.
Which kind of milk would you like? Oh my God. Almond or soy? First world problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you for coming.